Today's conversation, I am joined by the fabulous Marina Pearson. Hello, gorgeous.
Hello, darling. So good to be here.
Now, before I'm going to even let Marina say more words than that, I wanted to say I have had the privilege of dancing in life by Marina's side for, I would say, 10 years,
Something like that.
something like that, both as a guide and a mentor. And then friend, I had the privilege of inputting into and not quite the forward, but part of one of your beautiful books. Marina and I have been in the bush together and deep visioning. We have been in many places in the world. And Marina is a coach, a guide, an extraordinary woman, so many identities in life. And Marina brought this question, this conversation, this inquiry to me and said, how about we have a conversation around this? This is about inheriting money, getting money, well, a lump sum of money coming into our lives, which we didn't work hard for. Sometimes it could be an inheritance. Maybe it's a divorce settlement. Maybe it's an insurance payout that comes through. And so many of, I've had now the privilege of working with thousands of people and so many of their stories. And this is a big way many people, a lump of money comes in. And it can be a really, oh, fuck moment with so many aspects in. So, Marina, before we dive on in, is there any other aspect of just who you are that people would like to know?
Sure. I mean, I'm a bit of an adventurer, really. Deeply curious about life. And I'm a mother as well, and somebody who has made so many mistakes, but yet every part of my being is grateful for those moments because I have embodied what I've seen. And now I carry this wisdom that I can share with others. So I'm super excited because actually from this conversation, and I'm creating a network for women who inherit and who can be seen and be heard in a really safe space where we can talk about investments, but that's not really the crux of it. The crux of it for me is to talk about how they experience their experience of wealth. Um, so from this journey I've been navigating for the last 10 years, because the last 5 years have been brutal, to say nothing more than that. It's been one initiation after the other. But from that, I have seen, heard, and actually really anchored in where wealth comes from. So,
So, my darling, let's go back to a day when you realized a reasonably juicy, sizable, fuck lump of money was coming into your life and you were now responsible for it and you had it. And so tell me a little bit about your story of inheriting and what happened for you in that.
so most people think that, it's the Holy Grail. And even me just sharing this with you would seem somewhat ungrateful. But it's not being ungrateful about the lump sum, and it was life changing, and we're talking millions here. Um, but it also at the same time, at the time when I received it, I didn't really know. I was like, yay, this solves my problem. I don't have to work. I'm all good. Like I can buy property. It's all wonderful. And so at the time, I didn't really understand what it meant for me. It just was like, oh, I have this money. Great. That was kind of where I was sitting
But
with
just
that.
to be specific, this lump came in your life. Did it all come in one lump?
So there was a bit of a lump beforehand. That was about 300,000. And then there were other lumps that came in after that. What big lump after my father passed away. And then another big lump when my mother passed away. So it didn't come with, it wasn't bequeathed to me before they died.
Yeah.
There was actually, the bigger lumps were, but there was also some assets that we had to sort out. So we're three sisters, and basically, one of my sisters said, "Hey, hang on a second, how are we going to sort this out? Because we've got three apartments, three of us. This is a nightmare." So we kind of figured out that we wanted to shift things around and put things in people's names. And in the end, I actually got a big lump sum of money as well from that. So It was a bit by bit, but the major big point was when my father passed away.
But
And
the reason I ask that is because this can also have like these shock factors. You know, one of the things we talk about is money flows. Is like when you've also got systems and processes and a psychology and a way of working that relates to a certain flow, and then suddenly a much bigger lump come that can have
yeah,
a bit of an oh fuck. But before we get to, I also want to ask how many conversations, how much training had you been given by your father, your parents, your mother?
zero, zilcho, nada. I just thought you got the money and then you lived happily ever after. That's basically what I thought.
You know,
It was,
that is so, and it's such an interesting thing because I don't think any, sensible parent or loving parent would go and get their 16-year-old or 17-year-old child a Ferrari and put them at the wheel of it without a single driving lesson or give them a super motorbike and go, good luck. There you go. There's so many other areas of skills. We understand their skills and sides. So I just want to set some parameters because for a lot of people in terms of inheriting money often or getting this big lump sum in, it also comes, there's this huge pile comes in. There's a whole lot of beliefs. And so we'll come back to like, oh, money's going to make everything okay. Or, it's going to be woohoo, hunky-dory. But actually no skill set to deal with it. So
and
this
so,
came into your life, and then what was the stuff that started happening for you?
so I suddenly realized that there was a finite amount. Now, I never had to worry about money growing up, so it was never a thing. But I did have a father who fought in the Second World War, who had a very hoarding mentality. I mean, just to give you an example, we lived in a Grade 2 listed building in Hampshire in the UK. It was beautiful. But my mother and I couldn't put the heating on during the winter time. We had to wear jackets because my father didn't want to spend money on the heating. He never sent anything by a first class stamp. It was always second class because he wanted to save money. And he wore underwear that had holes in it. His jumpers were falling apart. And my mother, who literally had nothing really. I mean, she didn't come from wealth. She had like the biggest heart in the world and would donate money and would do, would adopt children and send money. And here's my father wanting to hoard it all. And so it was really conflicting messages for me.
Yeah.
And I didn't really understand it because I'd never really had to worry about it. I had a great education. We went on really nice holidays. And so it was like, oh, okay, money comes in, money goes out, whatever. I'm all good. And then, so the money came into my estate, and it was, and you see, the thing is there were so many things I didn't understand at the time. And it was only with time that I started to understand, actually, with hindsight, what had been going on for me. So I'll give you an example. I remember actually living in London and I was working at the time and feeling a real panic about what if I lose all this money? Like, I don't know how to manage it. So it was kind of starting to dawn on me because there was the beginning of Euphoria. It's a bit like when you fall in love, where it's like euphoric and you're having an amazing time and everything's wonderful and you've got money and this and that. And then suddenly it was like, well, hang on a second. Shit. I better look after this because I don't actually, it's not going to last, there's only a finite amount. So I I looked for education. I didn't know where to go. The thing for me was that my father had left me not only an inheritance, but he'd also left me a team of people that I did not resonate with whatsoever. He had had advisors, so wealth managers. Oh, ha ha ha. And I was like, I don't resonate with you. Like, you charge me 5% of my portfolio. That doesn't seem right. And I started to get a little bit sort of like, well, no. So
And
yeah,
in that, just interjecting
yeah,
with you,
5%.
because I think this also, yeah, 5%. We all know as
James's
well
play.
what 5%. They definitely wanted to hold on to you. You were their lucky ticket. So I think this happens a lot in terms of either an estate is put together or their side. how do you believe you are treated? Because often from a child, let's say it doesn't matter what age you are, that you are the child of the inheritor often, so there's this, you can be 50 years old and still be the child treated like that. Where it comes, did you find those advisors or the team quite patronizing? Because one of the things I've sort of had a lot from the inheritance,
Mm.
almost the sense of, well, you should be listening because you didn't really make that money. And so was there any element of
Yeah,
that?
I think so. And the thing is, that I like the guy, but he was old school. And, please don't do this ever, by the way. I told him where to go, took my money out, and then invested in something super risky. I didn't lose it all, but I'm still cleaning up that mess. And he said to me, I don't think that's a good
This is
idea. And
before Welsh Chef days.
yes, all of this was before Welsh Chef days. And I said, well, no, I'm taking my money and I'm going elsewhere. But what I hadn't realized was that it wasn't that I didn't need guidance. It was that I felt that who was standing in front of me didn't represent me whatsoever in the least. He represented my father, not me.
Yeah.
And because I was so innocent in my ways and so trusting in my ways, because I'd never really had to deal with the financial world before. I was an artist, I was a creative, I was a, you know, free spirit. And I just came into money. So I felt like this doesn't belong to me. So it was
And
almost
I
like
did.
having to step
So that
into this
identity piece, who am I?
massive, massive. I would say that inheriting is a shift in identity. And it's taken me 15 years and really to step into and integrate that I am actually a wealthy woman. And it's taken me years. And even when you and I worked together and you said to me, you can draw down. I didn't believe you. And I it was about 2 years ago again, somebody looked at my numbers in my portfolio because I was looking to rearrange it again. And he said to me, you're financially free. You don't have to work again. And honestly, my nervous system wouldn't believe it. It was like, well, I don't think you're right. I don't think you're lying to me. That is literally the response. It was, and so I started to realize that I lived with my wealth with a sort of underlying panic that somehow I was going to fuck it up, underlying panic that somehow I couldn't trust myself with it.
You didn't know
Underlying,
what it
exactly. And I had all of these beliefs around I'm no good with numbers, but things that I didn't even realize I was carrying. I remember sitting at an event where I was with a whole bunch of other coaches and I was sharing how I was experiencing the coaching world and being a coach, and I finally declared that I'd inherited. It was like this big declaration. I could feel myself sweating, but just by sharing it. And the guy turned around at me and he said, you're so lucky because you don't actually have to work at all. Like you can create clients without that desperation. And I sat there and I went, well, why do I feel desperate all of the time? And suddenly I heard the words of wisdom came through me. And I heard literally, this is not your story, it's your father's. And I sat for 2 days going, well, what is my story then? All of this inherited belief system just fell away. And I got curious about, well, what else am I carrying that isn't mine? And I realized that when we inherit wealth, we also inherit a whole bunch of belief systems, ancestral patterns, stuff that you're not even aware of. And you think you're fine, but your bank balance says something different, and your nervous system is saying something different. So when I came across your work, I was sitting in a beautiful villa at the time, but I couldn't pay my bills.
Yeah, I remember.
And I thought, there's this Anne Wilson that keeps popping up on my screen, and she calls herself the Welsh chef. She obviously must know a thing or two about this stuff than I do. I thought, right, I'm going to take a punt here. I had some gold, by the way, and I sold it for a lot less than I bought it for, but it paid the bills and I got to do your course. Well, here was where it just cracked me open. I realized that I just didn't have the skills. I didn't know what was coming in and out. I had no idea what a balance sheet was. I had no idea what a like cash flow forecast was, and none of it. I had no idea. And it was like walking into a completely different world. But I knew that I had the commitment. So I sat there for 2 weeks going over all of my statements, my bank balances, and everything else. And I basically decided, right, I'm going to set myself a commitment here, and I'm going to go through everything that's gone in, everything that's gone out, everything that's gone in, everything that's gone out over the last 2 years. And it was just such a breakthrough moment for me, because I realized that I'd spent most of my time avoiding any of that stuff. I'd luckily bought some property. So I was, I put it in places that I couldn't access, but I was waiting on a property to sell. So I realized, oh my God, I've got no cash, no liquidity, no freedom fund, there was nothing. So I started to realize, okay, there's the skills side I need. So this is where you and I started to really do the work together. But here's the interesting thing about all of that, Anne. I got the skills, but the fear never went away. So when you and I stopped working together, I realized that I'd actually got myself into some sort of codependent relationship with you. Now, this is a massive confession, by the way. Anne didn't know this, that I was going to tell you this, but it became really clear to me that going to somebody for support wasn't just about support for me. It was about save me, because I feel like I'm drowning.
That there's this underlying, and thank you for bringing this up, because I think this is such an important one. This deep aspect of this belief that we need somebody else to save us or help us when it comes to our money stuff. This knight in shining armor syndrome, this rescue element. And part of it is a desire to go to that, well, I don't want to have to handle this side, but there's another deeper, I don't have what it takes. And if I fuck this up, and I think this is what's so important, this big inflow with an inheritance can really, it acts as this massive
magnifier.
Massive, money is a magnifier. But if we've been accumulating and coming up, that magnification, grows and we have size. But suddenly this thing can come in like this massive, like shining the sun through a magnifier, like, fuck this, I don't have. And as you said, there's the truth in it. You don't have the skills. And that's, one of the biggest challenges. One of the reasons, like, why, it's a terrifying statistic. It's over 80% of people either win a lottery, get an inheritance, get a significant divorce settlement, get a insurance payout, any kind of lump sum flows, and end up in a worse financial position. Their net worth might be in, say, a cash flow crisis, because they don't know that you actually need how to create liquidity from those assets, or they blow it all, or they find themselves giving it to partners, to kids, to friends, being the helper, because now there's a guilt stuff. So there's so many of these emotions I want to come to, but this underlying aspect that I don't have what it takes is, I think, a thread that all of us have to it's still with. And every now and then I catch myself going, I wish somebody else could help me make this decision or this choice. And I go, hang on, slow down, what's really going on? Then I can be compassionate. Oh, that's just this deeply ingrained story that especially women, we've been told,
yeah,
somebody else.
Especially women. Now, we're all one. We're float ethereal in the 5D universal, I don't know.
Yeah.
But women especially. I've done a lot of research in the last 2 or 3 months of digging into where is the financial industry right now. And the majority of it is still old school boys club. It is men in suits that don't represent me still, right? So I'm like, so here we are as women. We are moving into the biggest transfer of wealth that's happening now from the baby boomers that are dying. And because women will live longer, there is a massive transfer of wealth going into women's hands in the next 20 years. But the statistic, Anne, is frightening, because basically 1 in 3 women feel confident in investing. 1 in 3. So what happens to the other 2 when they are transferred with wealth? And so to me, I realized that the only way that I was going to really embody the sovereignty that I was looking for was to actually go back to safety in self and realize that my wealth comes from within, not from out there. And I had a huge epiphany when I was doing polarity work, actually, funnily enough. I realized I had loads of people-pleasing stuff going on, and that was basically showing up in my life in all sorts of ways when I was doing deals, when I was, investing in companies, for example, because I've invested in a few startups, and I had this blind trust in these people. Like, I trust you. Like, there's no reason for me to trust you whatsoever in the least. And the thing, what I've seen is when I'm coming from that place of I don't trust myself, when I'm coming from that place of big one, core one was money will abandon me, because it was basically men will abandon me, but I would attract scams into my life to wake me up to the fact that, hang on a second, show me the numbers. I need to get a lawyer to look at this contract. I need to basically have a team around me that can actually support me in doing this properly. But because I was still so much in that, I call her the maiden archetype, where it was like, I am so scared. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. But oh,
Yeah.
okay, well, this will give me some sort of relief from the feeling of so scared that I can. And so what would happen is I'd lose the money. I then want to sort it out by also then doing another deal that would then bring me back the money that I'd lost. And I was in this vicious cycle until I suddenly woke up to I cannot solve an inside insecurity with an outside way of doing things. And I was trying to patch it up by doing that. And this is after you and I stopped working together that I really went in for the last 5 years and got initiated again and again and again. But here's the thing. I now know that I am totally and utterly equipped to handle loss, and that I get intimate with my numbers, no longer afraid of them. I do my spreadsheets. I realize I'm actually very good with numbers, actually. This is something I did not realize. So anyway, there we have it.
Thank you. And because there's few things, and I want to circle back, but there were three key points you made. Firstly, is really getting clear on what wealthy is, and this is one of the things we go deeper and deeper and more in the Enough program. And if you would, and I'm really spending more time on this, each of us really reorienting and going, not from some sort of oh well, money doesn't matter, let's float around in the ether. BS. We're physical beings, like we need
It does
money
matter.
matters deeply. But we actually spoke last week on the first intake of FU about, at its core, wealth starts with peace and feeling safe, these internal elements. So this really getting clear, okay, what is wealthy? And then getting into an aspect of going, no amount of money will, no thing, nothing, no thing outside of ourselves can ever define our worth. And so this
No,
this is a lifetime journey, and because we are constantly being told the opposite, the home we live in, the clothes we wear, how we show up, what we look like, whether those wrinkles are there or not, your age, your whatever your shit defines just your very right to life, your right to be loved, to belong. And so when you spoke about, we often think, well, if there was enough money that I could then have those things, I could live in that home, drive that car, have those things, then finally I might feel safe and okay to belong. And the devastation is we can never seek something that can never define who we are. If we seek that, it will always be like that sugar rush. It will always be that empty element. So that key side, we can never define our worthiness outside of us. But this point that you've said, this third point around when we make choices from an anxious, insecure, pleasing or performing nervous system, which most of us, there's not a single person that I know alive who hasn't, because we go to those default behaviors just, but we learned them to survive. But when we're making those, then our ability to make that clean decision, because as long as we believe money and money decisions are linked with our safety and our emotional safety and our emotional enoughness, we will forever make crap decisions. So this uncoupling that has to happen, it's like a cleaving that has to happen, that it goes, money's there. This is me. That's money. This is me. And there's a deeply important relationship. This custodianship that you could spoke about can only come. Leadership, custodianship, asking those questions, really looking after, can only come when we recognize that we are not defined by it. And this is a cleanness that we're not, because intergeneration, most of us watched mothers dependent on somebody else financially or other women. Intergenerationally, we're one of the first generations of women that can truly actually have full agency financially and feel safe around. There were outliers in different sides, but en masse there wasn't. And so when you spoke about this uncoupling, you can't ask empowered questions. You can't say to your financial advisor, well, show me the numbers inside, when you believe that your worthiness is entangled to the answers around the money or the decisions around it, or
Yeah,
getting it
and
right or wrong.
exactly. And there was something else in that for me, which was if somebody had asked me, where are you making these financial decisions from? That would have been really, really helpful. Because for me to notice that most of the decisions I had made were coming from this dopamine fix, were coming from this, I need to do that so I can clear up that mess so that this mess is now, so that looking back now, I think I've not all of my financial decisions, but a lot of them were made from that place. And that just basically
But this is
caused,
really key because what's important in terms of this, because what you're talking about are also money patterns that don't necessarily only relate to getting inheritance. Because, yeah, I remember looking at some of your, it was the first, maybe we looked at your balance sheet and I was going, okay, tell me about this investment, tell me about it. I was going, wow, they were speculative. They were out there, they were all startups. And I was like saying, okay, we're going to get some index trackers in. And it was like, well, that's boring. That doesn't sound sexy. And so this element, so I love what you're saying about this dopamine element, but also thinking that, yeah, there, because it can be this aspect, but almost, well, hang on, I've got a big lump of some money. Isn't that what sophisticated, wealthy people do? Can be a story about, oh, but people who've got money, then they invest in startups and they're the angel investors and there's more complexity. I'm not saying that because, but often that can happen. This story that sophisticated investors or big people with bigger amounts of money take more risk, or there's more of an element here. And so thank you so much for hiding this. But then the next part that you spoke about, which is so critical, a pattern that we've all got to be careful, is the sunk cost fallacy. We make a mistake in a relationship, in a situation with money, something happens. Because our nervous system is so entangled in either that pleasing or fearing, we didn't stand up for ourselves, we didn't say what needed to be had, we didn't do the numbers, goes wrong. We can almost want to hide that or make
mm,
up for it, as you say, to then if I can write that wrong, if I can do the next one, then no one needs to know about that. Even if it's just a no one in our own head, or
yeah,
maybe, and I don't know whether for you, whether there was ever a sense of, oh fuck, what if our father's watching?
well, I tell you, it reminded me of a little child, when they scribble on the wall and then they get their finger and then they go like that to like
Get rid of it.
get rid of it. It's just weird everywhere.
And this comes back again to safety. Instead of saying,
Mm.
okay, shit, what's happened here? And it's slightly different because we here, but one of the things I really learned from one of my mastermind colleagues was, especially for those of us who tend to be lone rangers, want to go our own way, often it can be from a deep shame
It
that we don't
was.
want to be seen to be getting something wrong. So we'll try and hide something. We won't only want to show our work when we can go, oh, look, you get a gold star. And so this aspect of wanting to sort of hide. So it also does talk to what you said. Part of that challenge can be, well, I didn't earn this money. So now I'm
Yeah.
a custodian of it. I don't really think I've got the capacity. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, but I don't want anybody to know that because what will they think?
Well, for
So
ages,
let's
I didn't
talk
actually.
about this emotional weight that often comes with getting this. Because yes, you get a pile of money, great, bits and pieces. But what was the range of emotions? Because shame, I mean, we spoke earlier a bit about shame, but that's a big one. So, I mean, let's talk about shame, the other sort of aspects that came, the burden.
So I remember, but what came to mind today for me where I wanted was this sort of guilt that I didn't make it myself. And I think I remember having this conversation with you about it in a white truck somewhere in South Africa. We were talking about, you were saying how, there's so many entrepreneurs that make a shit ton of money themselves, but they never invest it in any other assets. And it struck me because it felt like I had cheated. I had no value.
Mm.
I haven't proved that I could make the money myself. And I didn't even know I was carrying that around until I realized that actually I spent most of my time surrounded by people that were making a shit ton of money from their businesses. and feeling like I'm not enough. That was a really big clue for me. And I then went, and then your conversation with me shifted something because I thought, well, hang on a second, maybe there is value in actually my journey. And it wasn't until last year, Anne, where I started writing about my wealth journey. I started writing about the fuck ups. I started writing about the shame. I started writing about my personal emotional experience with it all. And oh my God, was there massive liberation in that because I hadn't even realized that that was still going on.
That kind of shame spiral of hide, fix, side, maybe talk to one another, but a deep loneliness in that as
Yeah,
well.
I didn't feel like I had a peer group that could completely understand
You didn't.
where I was coming from. And inherited wealth, as you say, like there's a feeling of guilt. I've spoken to quite a few women now who are inheriting or about to inherit that have their own businesses. And the number one feeling that they feel is guilt that they didn't make it themselves. And of course, it makes sense because the baby boomers are all about generating wealth, working hard. And now that we've done all that, we're going to now give that to our children. And the children are going, well, you've taught me that working hard is how you are valued in the world because that's what you did. And now you're giving this to me. And now I feel completely guilty about how I feel about this. And what's been fascinating to me is having conversations with women who teach money stuff, who have come to realize and notice that they actually feel guilty about this. And so I thought, wow, this is now it looks crazy to me, but I can totally understand. And so, from that guilt, what do you do with that money? Because if there is that underlying guilt, well, you can give it away,
Yeah, lose it in different
you can
ways.
lose it in different ways. Just so that you don't feel guilty, it kind of unconsciously leaves your life. And so
So there's that sort of guilt and almost that shame, guilt and shame, because shame, they're slightly different. Sort of
they're
guilt,
different.
shame that I'm not good enough, that I don't have what it takes. And it is interesting when so many parents say to me, oh, the greatest gift I want to give my kids, I want to create this money so they never have to work. They've just got all the money. And go, careful, careful what you do.
No, please don't
But
do
if you're
that.
not giving them
Don't
and
do
really
that.
working on identity, like careful what fucking story
Do
you put
please do
kids
not do
on.
that. And I
Yeah.
realized something is that because I had the money, I never felt I needed to work. So if project didn't actually happen, I didn't have to pull my finger. I could just retreat and not have to
Dig in, discover who you are. It's those edges. It was interesting when you said about this coach said, oh, well, you didn't have to, sell or get clients from desperation. Well, you don't have to sell from desperation. It can also be from challenge, from curiosity to get to see who we are. Challenge is such an important side, but we can still create that even with money in place. I want to speak about, did you feel at all, because, working with lots of people, a lot of people who've got that from a divorce settlement, as you say, any lump that comes in which hasn't been worked for can trigger this same, whatever that inherited way it comes in, is a sense of duty about that there's almost like an additional responsibility for the person that you got it from, that they are still the boss of that money somehow.
oh
And
yeah.
like now they're sort of watching you. So you've got to like look after it for them. Like what might they have wanted? So are they looking over your shoulder, or and you spoke about this fear of getting it wrong, but almost as though there's this intergenerational burden on you. Was there any element of that? Like it's
I
not really
think the
your
shame,
money, not just
right.
you didn't earn it, but it's not really your money.
Yeah. So I think the shame was even deepened by the fact that I was really fucking it up from the fact that my father had, spent hours, years with a financial paper in his hand and he was really interested in all the numbers. So there was that. And there was also something else that showed up for me, which really surprised me, was that it didn't feel like it was my estate for ages. Like that was a process. That was a process that wasn't my money. That was my father's money that I just happened to be looking after. So
What was the element that allowed you to start saying, as you said, I'm a wealthy woman?
my
It's
partner,
so it was, we'll come back to just some of these steps, but to go, I'm Marina, and there's this money that I get to have, and I'm a wealthy woman inside and out, and getting this. As I know it's a long journey, and maybe that's a big question. Some of the other elements.
there were definitely so everything helped. So there was the work we did together. The polarity work I did really astounded me actually, because I realized that I was so scared to stop working, so scared to stop being busy. And when I realized when I had this massive thing go on with my ex-husband, emotionally I was spent. I had to stop. And the fear that my estate would not look after me was something that I'd never actually stopped to notice. And I realized that it was blind panic. Can it hold me? Am I able to live with this? Can I support me? Oh my God, what if it can't? I have to keep earning money. And then I started to kind of go, and at that point I started to do deep feminine work. And I went, holy shit, this is how I am with men. And so I started to, not when I was starting to sort of go into that deep feminine work of my femininity, how to trust the masculine, to hold me, for me to be able to share my desires with them. It was almost like I was having a conversation with my wealth. And that work really transformed everything for me, because I realized that for me, because it had come from my father, wealth represented the masculine. Now, if my relationship to the masculine was, please love me, please take care of me, please, 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 and it wasn't
Yeah.
coming from that place of sovereignty, of desire, of saying,
This is
I'm
what I want.
here, this is what I want, this is how I want to create, I trust that you will hold me, that you won't rescue me, but that you will hold me and lean back, not lean forward, which is what I kept doing a lot of the time. Wow. So I suddenly realized that I went from owing my estate, which interesting, right? I was taking from my estate and I owed it. And I was taking from my estate and I owed it. Versus actually my estate being this beautiful, wonderful, I don't know, feather bed of support for me in moments when I really needed it. And so that was massive, because I realized that my father must have lived like that. He must have lived in fear that if I do not stop working, this money will run out and we will not have anything. And then he didn't stop working, and then basically he died, and then he gave it to me, and then I lived into that pattern as well. And for years I didn't feel like it was mine. And it
Yeah, and
wasn't,
this
yeah.
duality of a life, it can seem like you're spending money and you're doing it even on the investments and side, but the ability to actually get nourishment to digest and receive. So you speak about that feminine ability to receive and
See,
actually get the nourishment, the support, the joy of what it can do is not there, because there's no ability to actually bring it in. So they might on the surface look like patterns, maybe a villa here outside, but the lived experience is actually quite one of starvation.
I was petrified, petrified. And I realized that my relationship to the masculine was very similar. You asked me, what was the thing? Well, it was lots of different things. But there was one moment, another very, very, very important, well, two important moments. One of them was when I started to work with women and people pleasing, and I was in the bath one night and I heard, money will abandon you. And I realized that I've been carrying that for years, because I thought that men would abandon me. And of course, it made sense to me that money would abandon me, because money, same thing. And then it was my partner. He's very clever. He sees. And he said to me one day, he went, can you explain something to me? I went, oh. He went, why do you keep calling yourself a coach when you're an investor? You live off your investments. You don't live off your coaching. And I sat in the back of the car and I went, whenever anybody would ask me, what do you do? Being an investor was something that was kind of in the sidelines. It was like backstage, it was the sidelines. That you don't talk about that. That's not something you talk about, right? You're a coach, you're an author, you're a podcast. No, the investor piece never came into the conversation. It was
Talk about that identity, yeah.
massive. And that day, everything changed for me, because I suddenly saw I haven't integrated this identity at all. This identity is, I kind of been sitting there, yeah, whatever, pushing it to one side. And I thought, it felt like I was an imposter to say that I was an investor because things hadn't gone quite right or I'd really fucked. And I thought, well, what if I took it on? What if I decided to take on this role of being an investor and a wealthy woman and integrate it into my life? It's been nothing short of miraculous, actually, because the integration piece of this, I can now feel it in my bones.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I've realized is it's not the money you fear, it's the power. It's the power.
Yes.
I've had to
It's
deal
also
with
the responsibility. It's
massive.
responsibility and power.
So,
So, Marina, you've covered that so beautifully, this integration and identity. And, Vanessa, you say, how do you fix it or how do you transition? Identity is such a vital piece. And this way I see so many people who also even make money. Maybe they get a win or they get something working in a business side. But if the identity is one of the hustler or the struggler or the side, and there's not the slowing down to actually let yourself catch up with the truth, to go, well, actually, a large part of what I do or my role, or what do we believe, especially when you say labels, when people say, well, what do you do? Well, I'm an author, and needing a name, a label. It's meaning, how do we pass some of our time and our activities? Because it is such a curious thing, these labels. But this identity, I love how you said, well, let me try on. What is it? What is a let me try on the identity of I'm a wealthy woman, because then it can say, well, what does that mean? Because it say the younger you, when this money initially came in, or younger, because you're still gorgeous and sexy and young and all
oh,
of
thank
whatever.
you.
And that in that energy, you always will be playful till the day we slide sideways to that grave. Is that comes with also having to know what we mean by wealthy, because we think just about money. Oh well, because the other day I read somebody's email or something about the dream of never having to think about a spend decision again, just having all the money you could spend on anything.
Shit.
Well, it's bullshit, and
It's
unfortunately,
bullshit.
it's complete bullshit. The most devastating snake oil story that's put out there, that's the aim of the wealth game, that's what it means to be wealthy, that if you get a big lump sum, that's great, because it's the worst lie. And it said that initially you thought, okay, great, he has all this money now, I can just spend, and everything will be hunky-dory. It's not dealing with actually the power and the responsibility of custodianship. So I want to bring this word custodianship in, because whether we however we get to this point where there's this beautiful pile of capital, this pile of assets that we get to have the privilege to lead and direct, because that's what it means to be wealthy. We get to have the power and the responsibility to lead and direct money in service of life. And that is ultimately what we're doing. And that's what custodianship is. That's to give direction, as you also talk about stewardship. So this coming into this, what are the things that you learned now that are really maybe the pillars of being a great custodian to your money? Because at all level, just in the simple wealth shift world, putting in a wealth and money management system, knowing where it's going and coming, as you say, being prepared to ask questions. But I think there's some key elements that allow it to shift to go, oh, well, I'm just spending money and that's what freedom and wealth is, to know it's actually stewardship. I've been given this gift of something with a lot of power and opportunity to direct. So let's speak about custodianship and stewardship and that transition with this identity. What enables you to be a better steward?
So I spend a lot of time, I get really excited about spending my monthly date with my money and knowing where my money is gone and where it's going. I used to hate those dates, but I love them now. And I actually get a real kick out of spending time and getting curious about that. So I think the other thing that I'm really aware of now that I wasn't before was I'm much more conscious in my spending and where I want to put my money. So because I look at it every month, I go, okay, well, next month, do I want to spend more of it in travel? Or so I'm aware where my values lie, like where I can actually spend what's of value to me and the valuable life I want to create. So for me, for example, I spend a lot of money on petrol because that basically that's going to see my partner. And I really value that connection time with him. I love to eat well. So my budget of eating is quite high, but I love the fact that I can bring a really nice steak into the house and we can have a yummy, yummy time. So that's something else I enjoy. I've stopped eating out. It's a conscious decision because I want to eat better at home. And during the week, I don't really go out. So there are decisions that I'm currently making that are much more conscious. So that's one side of it, the management of the day-to-day management of things. In terms of investing, it started small, like this nudge, but I've started to look into value-based investing. I had a wake-up call where I was like, well, hang on a second, there are trillions. I mean, and I started, well, first of all, I looked at the stats and I went, how much money is lost through scams, through fraudulent situations that heiresses are actually putting in trillions every, and it broke my heart, and it still does, because that money could have been put somewhere else to make the world a much better place.
Yeah, exactly. And this is when we truly understand custodianship without
Yeah.
adding guilt or shame onto it. It's going, we need to do the work to have these conversations, to talk about separating identity and worthiness from where money came from. It doesn't matter where it came from. There's now this opportunity with it. How do we get the basic skills, but how do we also feel that sense of ownership, that to truly understand the power we've been given and this
Yeah.
opportunity to direct it where it's done. That's why it's so important we have these conversations to how quickly we can help people bridge from the freaking overwhelm, as you say, that euphoria of the woohoo, this is fun, to the fuck, to
Yeah.
what are people going to think of me, to shit, I mustn't make the wrong decision, to okay, I'm safe, it's okay, this is money, this is me, I now get to direct it. Because as you say, there's trillions of areas who shit, the scams, the bullshit this is
And
going
I've
to.
been part of, I'm a statistic, by the way. But here's what I've seen is that I almost have a fiduciary responsibility to the planet and the world to put my money into things that are going to have massive impact. And that was a huge wake up call for me because I realized that I wasn't doing that because I was so in the mess. I didn't even have the elevation to kind of go, well, hang on a second, where is my money actually even being invested? So I have looked at different funds now that are much more aligned to my values, that are clean. So money's going into more conscious companies. And I started to sort of look at what is conscious capital. And it really excites me. It really excites me because I'm like, I don't want to be part of the problem. Like if I'm putting money into a company that's basically dealing arms and taking them over to Gaza and killing people, I don't want my money to be doing that. I want it to actually be generating beautiful things in the world. So that's where my consciousness has gone. I've realized, wow, my money can have some real impact. And I hadn't really understood that until last year. So it's taken me a bit of time to get there, but I'm there now.
And what a beautiful, juicy journey to get there. But I just want to come take that step for people listening. You could only be able to even start having that contemplation and that
Yeah.
consciousness once you had got into your own emotional safety, once
Yes.
you also navigated through the judgment, the pleasing, the appeasing, the fear of others, and owning and
Yes.
uncoupling money from Marina. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing is this, people piss me off. So they never used to piss me off, and in the sense that they used to, but I would never say anything. So I'm currently in a dispute with a company where I'm a shareholder, and they've done something that I don't particularly like all that much. Now, the old me would have just sat there and taken it and gone, oh, they must know, they must be right. But I've sat with somebody and I've gone, no, what have they done? Is this correct? Do I have a legal standing here? And I wrote them in my peace of mind. But the point being is, however it unfolds, the one thing you can lose money, the one thing that experience can never take away from you is how grounded you feel in your power. And that to me that is basically priceless. And that is something that I didn't realize until now. That moves mountains, that can create miracles, that can create experiences that you never even considered. And I sit here now going, I have been through a lot. I have experienced a lot. I've had to navigate a lot. But the woman I see before me today is now completely and utterly capable of telling somebody where to go, actually going, right, I don't think you're correct. We need to hear all the questions I need to
To
question
feel, as I say, to answer, ask questions, to feel okay and
and to disagree, even. I mean, wow, that's an. No, I don't want to do that. How about this? And I've actually, and the other thing that I've realized is you've got to listen to what's right for you. Now, I have actually decided to take on somebody that can guide me financially. And the reason I've done this is because I actually quite like having those sorts of conversations with somebody,
but there's a difference, but
but
that's
it's
very
different.
different from
Yeah.
abdicating. That abdication of response, it's so many people when it comes to a financial advisor or wealth or whatever you want to call it, is please handle this for me. I don't believe I have what it takes. It's sad, it feels overwhelming. Please rescue me. That abdication of that responsibility
Responsibility.
of custodianship versus great, I'm sitting on my throne. I'm not fucking going anywhere, but I'm going to get advisors. So you
Yes.
know what you're talking. I'm going to ask you questions. You're going to give me your suggestions, advice. I'm going to make the decision. There's no patronizing element. There's no. So this is the fundamental.
So true. Yes.
You get advisors who are
Ex
actually an advisor. Most people, what they call a financial advisor is somebody selling them crappy product. They don't advise at all. There's no information. They don't even know what the fuck they're doing. So this is different. You pay for good advice. You bring somebody in and say, great, I want you involved in this, and you're going to be a sounding board. We're going to challenge this, bits and pieces.
And I realized that I
That's the
needed that.
difference. Yes.
I needed that. Not everybody does, but my decision making now comes from much more from that place of, as you're sharing here, it's not like save me. It comes from a place of, does this guy get me? Do I feel seen? Do I feel heard? Can we have a conversation? Can I challenge you? I want you to educate me.
I want you to go out and find some information. It's like another member on your team.
Exactly.
You're
Exactly
the
that.
queen. You're on the throne. You're not
Exactly
getting to
that.
go, oh, why somebody else sit on the throne of the
Exactly
Most
that.
High by this?
Exactly that. So that's where the energetic has gone, and I couldn't be happier.
This is absolutely so beautiful. I'm just seeing the time, and thank you for everybody here. It's so key. So one of the things, even now, and you so talking about getting a lump of money, and I say, and that's what we speak about inheritance. But I feel I've so many people, well, great friend, you most, Lynette, she really struggled with the challenge that she came into custodianship and stewardship of of a big lump of money as a result of her husband having a brain tumor. Now she also now was responsible for him and she had to have all of that. But now this whole how it comes into our life. Joanna, you can also speak about sometimes the trauma that can also be anchored and linked with the money. So there's an aspect about also needing things to just de-energize and almost cleaning it of either the source of how we got it through a traumatic divorce, through an inheritance, through a whatever, to neutralize, because money is neutral. It is tofu. We put the energy on it. It's an incredible, powerful source, but when it comes, so you spoke about that, the inheritance of the money is also everything that it's come through in the past that you've seen. So there's that aspect. But then there's this aspect in terms of the fear of the judgment of others. So the pleasing or the appeasing element, or wanting to keep quiet. Because let's be completely fucking honest. We have a society that judges, and there's an association that power comes from earning and making money. We see it in relationships. We see it, the income earner is perceived to have more authority over what that money should say. They're doing this. There's a power linked with the earning money rather than the custodian and the doing with the money. And so for you, how have you, as you're even sharing now, you've got a nice big juicy shit ton of money came in, you fucked up a whole lot of things, you've done this, you come to the journey. I love that you are so able to come and be in this clean conversation. But even now, how do you navigate maybe the judgment around from others?
I went full on. Beautiful Helen, part of your community, reached out to me and she basically did a piece on inheriting, and she put it, we got it in the Daily Mail. That's how. So actually, I went all out. I decided to declare myself, came out of the closet and talked about it and put it in a newspaper. That's how I dealt with that one. I think ultimately, unless you are in a situation where that has happened to you, you can't understand what
Yeah.
is going on for that person. That's what I've realized. You can judge as much as you like, but at the end of the day, unless you've experienced it yourself, you can't really talk about it. You can't really have an opinion on it that is worthwhile for me to listen to because you just don't know. And so I understand that not everybody gets to live this privilege. I get it. I know. And I understand. And I have been judged for it. I have had massive fights over, I thought were friendships, but that disappeared because of it. And I've realized the people that really care about me, well, first of all, a lot of people just don't care. And what I realized was they don't give a shit, actually. You're the one giving a shit. No, everybody else is actually giving a shit about
What you do or don't
what
have
you do or don't
financially.
have.
Yeah.
It doesn't really fucking matter. And secondly, the people that really care about you, they're going to love you anyway. So I've become a lot more discerning about who I hang out with. And part of that sovereignty is about choosing to be with people that care for me because they love me regardless of what I've experienced. And there's something else that came through me that when you were talking about lump sums and dealing with lots of, my partner has taught me something so magical and so important in life, which is that waiting and not doing anything can be the most powerful move that you've got in your toolkit. He's a Libra, and he basically he can spend months mulling over decision, months. And I'm sitting there going, for fuck's sake, make a
I get
decision.
agonized after 10 minutes.
But I had to learn that. And I had to learn to go to every kind of, because what I would do is the knee-jerk reaction to act, to kind of do something.
Do not feel the discomfort of not knowing.
Bingo. And so sometimes I've learned now to go, okay, well, I'm going to look at this. I'm going to explore it. And sometimes I've just gone, no, I'm not going to do anything for now. I'm not going to do anything. And that was so new for me. It was like, whoa. Because I thought I'd be judged for saying, yes, I'm going to do it, or changing my mind. Actually, that's not true. So I love what you said about just letting it all settle and navigating those emotional experiences and allowing yourself the grace to navigate those without having to make anything else important in that moment. Because can't be easy. I mean, I lost my mother to a degenerative brain disease, and that was hard enough to see her lose herself. So I know how overwhelming it can feel. So give yourself the grace to not do anything.
Absolutely. And I think this is such a vital thing is, not rushing those decisions, not rushing spending, not, just let it in, put it in a pot, ring fence it, really not avoid it, but really go, I'm allowing the silt to drop out. It's as though, let me allow those things to come through. I'm not in a place to even make discerning choices, and I don't have to. I think this rush feeling, got to quickly invest, you've got
Yeah.
decisions, you've got to do that,
FOMO.
whatever that side. Well, thank you so much for this amazing conversations. And I hopefully if you're listening to this or somebody when you get a lump in your in your life, whatever that looks like, to start navigating these pieces. So just like, okay, I'm safe. Two, it doesn't mean anything. It's just, it is money. Three, allow it to neutralize because it can drop away that energy of however it came, other people, and keeping this connection. And then when as more and more of us conscious creators can come in and go, money is part of that deep masculine energy. Us as women coming into custodianship and our own stewardship as, I'm going to use some maybe woo words, but as a queen stepping back onto our thrones is actually allowing the energy of money to be what the empowered masculine is meant to be. It's meant to be in service of creation. Money will never create. It's not its role. It's an enabler. It's an input. It's not meant to be creating. That is what we are here for. but then it's allowing it and giving it direction. We have to give it direction with clarity, with confidence, and with a responsibility that comes with saying, wow, we get to do this. This is a privilege, a responsibility we get to create, which is what we can do. We get to create a world with this power, this responsibility, and stepping into that. So, Marina, I'm just so excited about this conversation, what you're exploring, helping people in this, having a safe place for this conversation. And so, how can people find you, connect with you if they want to continue this conversation or any other?
So you can go to my, I don't know, will you have any kind of show notes? There's a link or
Yeah,
something.
we'll absolutely will.
So I created a
Yeah.
little quiz. I called it the Inheritance Archetype Quiz, and basically it will show you where you are on that journey, whether you're a maiden, queen, or empress. And
I love
obviously,
that. I didn't even realize you were using that. That's
yeah,
great.
yeah,
Yes,
I
let's be the
have.
empress. Yeah.
And because I thought, what would I have loved actually? And I thought, well, actually, I would have loved to have known where I am on the journey. Like, and of course, we all have all three archetypes in us, and we can go from one to the other. But you'll have
Yeah.
one that
Sometimes we
dominates,
just want to
right?
be the friggin' maiden.
Yeah, and go and I don't know, drink lots of tequila and go naked. But ultimately, it will give you some really, I mean, the questions, it's 12 questions. It's really not that big, a long quiz, but it will give you some indication of where you are. And then at the end of it, I share a little bit about, what you can do, what practices can really support you in. And then there's also a blueprint I created. So if you're an empress, it takes you further deeper into that archetype. Because I realized that the feminine archetype work that I did, oh my God, it just revolutionized my relationship to wealth. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I decided to create for now. But my bigger vision is to create a network and to invite women who've inherited into this conversation. But their source of wealth being from the inheritance. So they could be along on their journey or whatever, but I think it's really important. So anyway, yeah.
That's fantastic. So we've got that link. It's been shared. We'll put it out with this as well. And thank you so much. And thank you for this amazing community coming, and we get to chew on these beautiful, juicy elements of wealth and life and money and our relationship to it and what it means. And thank you for being in my life.
And your work is so important and so needed. And honestly, yeah, it's just such important work. So thank you for being and thank you for creating this. Yeah.
Absolute joy. Bye, everyone.